Whenever we think about the planets or are taught about them in school, images like this often come to mind where the perfection and beauty of the planets is on full display. But in reality, when we look for the planets of the sky, this is more of a realistic view of what we will see. The planets of the night sky are more like steady points of bright light that can even outshine the brightest of stars. Here's another realistic view of what the planets, and here's the moon, would look like in the sky compared to the stars. So in this video, I'm going to give you a crash course on viewing the planets. We'll take a look at general characteristics of each planet, what they look like in the sky, and realistic pictures of what you would see if you viewed the planets through a telescope. Welcome to Learn the Sky. My name is Janine, and I'll be your guide as we explore the night sky together, one constellation at a time. Before we take a look at the different types of planets that we can see in the night sky, let's first identify what a planet is and where the origin of its name came from. The word planet is traced back to the ancient Greeks, and its name meant wandering star. And this is because its motion in the sky was very peculiar, and this is what you can see in this photo here. With Mars, sometimes Mars appears to be traveling forwards in the sky, and then it'll hang around for some time, and then it starts to travel backwards in the sky, and then it moves forward fairly quickly. And this motion is recorded over the course of a few months. So that's why it has that origin of the name wandering stars. But a planet itself has to meet three certain criteria in order to be classified as a planet. And we're strictly speaking of planets that are within our own solar system. First, the body needs to orbit a star, which in our case is the sun. It must be massive enough for its own gravity to make it round in shape or spherical in shape. And it must be big enough that its gravity has cleared out the objects in its orbital path. This is where Pluto was demoted because it didn't quite clear out its orbital path. So when we think of our planets, we think of our own solar system, and we have them here in order: Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, or Uranus, as I've been calling it as of late to honor the name in which it really came from, and then Neptune. These are the 8 planets. We have the inner planets that are rocky and small, and then we have the gas giants, also called the Jovian planets, and those are very large, and they're gaseous. They don't have a solid surface in which to land on. And then, of course, we have dwarf planets. So these are larger bodies in the solar system, but don't quite meet these 3 criteria. And then here is just another picture I found that has more of the dwarf planets that we have discovered as of late. But when we're talking about the visible planets that we can see, there are 5 main ones. And I have them here in order of size, which would be Jupiter, Saturn, Venus, Mars, and Mercury. So this is size and diameter of the actual planet. But in terms of brightness, these are the ones that are the most visible. So Venus is definitely the brightest out of all. Then we have Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and Mercury. But let's actually put some numbers to this. So I listed the magnitude for the planets that are the most visible. And I didn't include Uranus because it is so faint, and I really have 0 pictures of it, and it really looks like a star in all the pictures I have. And these are somewhat, realistic of what you would see it as you would look through it in a telescope. So Venus is by far the brightest at negative 4.6 magnitude. And remember, with magnitude, when it's a lower number, it's a brighter object. I've got a whole video about magnitude, so if you want to learn more, go see that. Mars would be the next brightest, but it's also fairly similar in magnitude to Jupiter. The way to tell the difference between them in the sky is the color. Mars is definitely a reddish color, where Jupiter is more of a whitish color. Then there is Saturn, and then Mercury. And notice how Mercury can be very bright, but it also can be invisible. Mercury, to me, is one of the hardest planets to find, and I can confidently say that I've seen it maybe like once, but it's often clouded by the Well, it's clouded by the clouds because it's only visible really close to the horizon, and often clouds just hide that. So in our next portion of the video, we'll walk through general characteristics and then what those objects look like in the sky. So we'll begin with Mercury, which is the first planet from the sun, and it's the smallest in the solar system. Mercury gets its name after the Roman god of the messengers because it really raced across the sky when the ancients observed it. If we were to go there, it would be a very cratered surface, very moon-like. It has extreme temperatures. It's cold on the side facing away from the sun and very hot on the side facing towards the sun. And it has very weak tectonic activity. So when you're trying to find Mercury in the sky, it is very, very difficult to find it. Here, what we're looking at is the moon. We have Venus right here, which is always the brightest planet, and then Mercury is right here. And I consider this a really good shot of Mercury. Mercury is often only visible during sunset or sunrise, and it's very, very close to the horizon. Mercury can also be viewed in transit when it travels across the sun. And when this happens, astronomers definitely make a big deal because it gives us an opportunity to see Mercury as it crosses the sun. Here I have another picture of what Mercury would look like. Notice how it's really close to the horizon and it's sunset time, and it is very, very faint. It can definitely be mistaken for a star. I've got one other picture here. We have the moon up in this corner, and are you able to find Mercury? There's only one really point right here, and that is what Mercury would look like in the sky. So if you can't find Mercury, I wouldn't be too discouraged. It's definitely one of those planets that is a challenge to see. Venus is the next planet that is definitely visible. In fact, it's the easiest one to find out of all of them because of its brightness. Venus is classified as Earth's twin planet in size, but it couldn't be any more different in terms of environment. Venus is named after the Roman goddess of love and beauty. And as you look at this photo, notice that it has really thick cloud cover, and that is made up of carbon dioxide. Now, this is a picture or an animation of the surface of Venus, but we can't really see that. When we look at Venus, we are looking at its cloud cover. The carbon dioxide on this planet traps the heat on the planet, and it is continually getting warmer, and the heat is building. In fact, the atmosphere is so thick that it has 88 times the pressure of the atmosphere of Earth. So it's experiencing this runaway greenhouse effect. We can see Venus as well as a transit, and that's when the planet is traveling in front of the sun. So whenever this happens, it's also very exciting for astronomers. But what our purpose here is to identify Venus in the sky and what are some realistic views of what it would look like. And this is a really great photo. Again, we have the moon, we have very bright Venus, and notice it's more of a disc-like shape as well. And then this is Mercury. Let's get a few more pictures of Venus. In fact, this is the one I have the most pictures of. But here we have the Pleiades, and here is Venus. You can see how bright it is compared to the Pleiades. Here's another photo. We've got the moon right here, and look how bright Venus is when you compare it to everything else in the sky. In fact, I don't really see many stars here. And Venus is best seen at sunrise or sunset. It's often called the evening star or the morning star. Here we have another great picture of the moon, and this is how bright Venus is, which is incredible. And then you can see other stars here when you compare it. Venus is just so much more brighter. And then I've got a few more photos to keep giving you some practice here, but here we have the moon. And then this right here is Venus. How do I know? Well, the moon is reflected, and the moon's light is reflected on the water here. And then this is just so bright that it must be Venus. I've got one more final photo for you. Here we are looking at Taurus. This is the Pleiades star cluster. And here is the V-shaped face called the Hyades star cluster. And this here is Venus. So this gives you a good idea of just how bright Venus is. And the time you want to look for it is in the early evening or the early morning hours. The next visible planet is Mars, and this planet gets a ton of press these days because of all the amazing research opportunities that are happening on this planet. But Mars is a planet that's half the size of Earth, and it's the fourth planet from the Sun. Mars gets its name after the Roman god of war because of its red color. It really is a fascinating planet because it has a lot of similarities to Earth. It has seasons, the tilt is similar, but there's also a lot of differences. Mars, since it's half the size of the Earth, it's not able to really hold an atmosphere, a heavy atmosphere like Earth. Its atmosphere is mostly of carbon dioxide. But our point here is not to explore the characteristics, but what does it look like in the sky? This is a picture of what Mars would look like if you were able to see it through a telescope. And you can see it has this reddish colors, it has areas of darkness, and then you can see one of the ice caps. So let's get some ideas of what Mars looks like in the sky. Here we have, this is definitely a zoomed up picture of Mars, because when you're looking at Mars, you're not really going to see a disk like this. You would really see a red point of light. But here we have a comet, and this is the planet Mars, just to give you a comparison. Let's get some more practice. Here, Mars really stands out. It's right here. Notice how it's brighter than all the other stars in the sky, and it has that reddish color. The next picture I want to show you is really helpful because it shows you the brightness of both Mars and Jupiter. So as you're looking at this photo, can you tell the difference between Mars and Jupiter? I can because of the color. Here is where Mars is. It has a slightly reddish color compared to this object. This is Jupiter, and Jupiter and Mars are very close in magnitude, but the colors are different. So that's the main way you can tell the difference between the two. Let's take a look at our next picture. This is actually one of my pictures. It's not great, but I definitely know what I'm looking at because I'm the one that took it. Here we have the constellation Capricornus, and Mars is right here. So you can see Mars has that reddish color, and it outshines the other stars around it. Another cool thing that we can observe with Mars is an occultation event. And this is when one object is hidden by another. So here we have the moon, and then here we have Mars that the moon was once covering, but then it appears. So if you ever get to see one of those events through a telescope, it's really fascinating. Here we have another picture. Okay, this time we're looking at two planets, and can you tell the differences between the two? We obviously can tell the moon is right here, but this is Venus, and then this is Mars. I love this photo because it gives you a good comparison of the brightness between the two. Venus will always be brighter than Mars. We've got a few more pictures. So here, what are we looking at? We're looking at the same thing we looked at the last picture. We're looking at the moon, we're looking at Venus, and we're looking at Mars. Can you tell the difference? Obviously, the moon is the larger one. Venus would be the next brightest, and then here is Mars. It even has that faint red color to it. Now we're moving on to the gas giants, the ones that are at least visible in the night sky. And one of my favorites to learn about is Jupiter. Jupiter is the largest planet in our local solar system. It's fifth from the sun, and it was named after the Roman king of the gods. And this is definitely a favorite target of many telescope owners out there because when you look at it, you can see the bands and you can often see the great red spot, which is this gigantic hurricane storm that's been going on Jupiter as long as we have been observing it, which is really incredible because we've been looking at Jupiter with the telescope as humans for over 400 years. Jupiter is famous for its moons, the Galilean moons, and these are the 4 moons that Galileo saw when he first turned his telescope towards Jupiter. And if you were to look at Jupiter with a telescope, this is what it would look like. Here you can see the bands right here. This is one view of what Jupiter would look like. And then here is another view. Okay, here is what Jupiter would look like. And then these are the 4 Galilean moons. And these moons change their position constantly as they're going around Jupiter. Here's another image of what Jupiter would look like, and then it's 4 Galilean moons. It's really fascinating to see. So if you ever have the opportunity to look at Jupiter through a telescope, I encourage you to do so. So let's get some practice with finding it in the night sky. So here we're looking at a picture of the winter sky. I can see Taurus, I can see the Pleiades, I can see Auriga, but the brightest thing right here, that is Jupiter. So it gives you an idea of how bright Jupiter is when you compare it to other objects, such as the Pleiades, the Hyades. This is the bright star Capella. This is the constellation Auriga. Let's keep getting some more practice. Here we're looking at a beautiful picture of the northern lights. I can see the Pleiades, but right here is where Jupiter is. Notice the Hyades star cluster right here, and then this bright star is the red eye of the bull, Aldebaran. So I'm pointing this out so you can see the comparison of the brightness. Jupiter is definitely brighter. And then let's keep going. We've got some other pictures here. We've got the northern lights, and that is Jupiter. Again, giving you a visual comparison of what stars look like versus what Jupiter looks like. I've got one more picture here. Okay, this is one of my favorite constellations. It is Scorpius, and it makes this glorious hook-like shape in the sky. We have Antares, the bright red star, red giant star inside of Scorpius. But right here is Jupiter. So again, it's brighter than Antares. It's brighter than all the other stars in this photo. So I hope this is helpful for you in order to learn how to find Jupiter in the sky. The next gas giant star we'll take a look at is Saturn, which is famous for its rings. It's the 6th planet from the sun, and it's named after the Roman god of agriculture. And if you were to look at Saturn through a telescope, this is a realistic view of what you may see. Here, this is a slightly grainy, but a pretty basic telescope that you can easily see Saturn with. And here, the pictures kind of improve with quality, but there's nothing like seeing the rings of Saturn through a telescope for the first time. But we also want to get an idea of what it looks like in the sky and how to find it. So in this photo, we're looking at a photo right at sunset, and there are 3 planets that you can see here. First is Venus. Then we have Mars, and then this right here is Saturn. So this gives you a visual comparison of the brightness. Notice how Mars has a slightly reddish tint to it. Venus is always the brightest, so it's the easiest to point out. And then here is Saturn. I do think it's pretty easy to confuse Saturn with a star because it's just not as bright as Venus, Mars, or Jupiter. But it's definitely brighter than Mercury, as we're going to see in this next photo. So here we have the crescent moon. This bright object here is Venus, and here is Saturn. Mercury also makes an appearance in this photo, but it's really hard to see. It's right there. Mercury is one that is very elusive for me. I feel like I've only confidently seen it once. But Saturn is pretty easy to find. At the time of this filming, Saturn is very close to Jupiter. So I usually try to find Jupiter first, and then from there I can figure out where Saturn is. Saturn is also really awesome to see through a telescope because it does have a series of moons that surround it. Titan, which is the most interesting one, and scientists actually landed a probe there, which is fantastic, and we found all kinds of interesting atmospheres and lakes of methane. So I foresee a future video with Titan for me. But I've got one more picture of Saturn for you. This is an occultation event. I struggle saying that word every time. But here, this is the surface of the moon, and then this is Saturn behind the moon. So really, really fascinating to see. So, we've talked about the planets that are visible. Let's talk about the ones that are not really visible. And starting with the seventh planet from the sun and the third largest planet, and the one that everybody tries to avoid saying the name, which is Uranus. There's a brilliant video that was made. I'm going to put the link down below about how to pronounce this name and the story behind it. I'm not going to redo the greatness of that video, but Uranus, or Uranus, as it's often called, is named after the Greek god of the sky, Uranus. And then this name here is the Latinized version of this Greek name. So I've kind of gone to start saying Uranus, but really the point of this video is to talk about how we can see it, or can we see it at all. The characteristics of this planet are really fascinating. It does have a ring system, it has a strong magnetosphere, and it has many moons just like the other Jovian planet. It also happens to be the coldest planet in the solar system. But this one we'll get to a minute is if we can see it or not. It is very faint and it is possible, but highly unlikely you'll be able to see this with the naked eye. But let's quickly talk about Neptune. Neptune is the third largest planet in terms of mass, but fourth largest planet in terms of diameter. It's the eighth planet from the sun, and it's named after the Roman god of the sea. Some interesting characteristics about it include having a thick, windy atmosphere. In fact, some of the fastest winds ever recorded have been on this planet, and it's mostly composed of water, ammonia, and methane. It has very thin rings, and it has a very active atmosphere and many moons surrounding it. So, are we able to see these two objects? Well, yes and no. Uranus is one that has the apparent magnitude of 5.68. So it's right at that naked eye limit. So if you live in an area with lots of light pollution, there's basically no way you're going to see this. But if you live in an area that has very dark skies, seeing this is a possibility. You would definitely need to look and consult some star maps to figure out where you should be looking. It's not going to stand out like the other planets do. But Neptune is definitely invisible. It's below the naked eye limit. You would need magnification to see it. Its apparent magnitude is 7.78. And I found this interesting picture because it shows you all the different moons that surround both of these planets. And I can't end a video of the planets without talking about Pluto, because when I grew up, Pluto was a planet, but it's been demoted. It is now a dwarf planet because it pretty much has not cleared out its orbital path of debris. And Pluto is named after the Roman god of the underworld. And when I grew up, there were no pictures of Pluto, and now they are. Now there are pictures, and it is magnificent. But just to give you an idea of why Pluto was demoted, I thought this would be a great picture to show you. This gives you a size comparison of Earth, the moon, and Pluto. So our moon is bigger than Pluto. So you can see why it would be demoted in terms of its size, and also the fact it just has not cleared out its orbital path. So, as I said, this was definitely a quick crash course on all the planets in the solar system and which ones you can view. We are able to view Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn with ease. Uranus would definitely be difficult to see. I can't say that I've ever seen it with the naked eye, and Neptune is definitely not visible. It was definitely invisible to the ancients. This was not discovered until we started turning telescopes to the sky. So I really hope this video was helpful for you in order to how to find the planets, what are their comparisons in terms of brightness, and just some general appreciation of these really, really unique environments, because it gives us a sense of why Earth is special, okay? Because if we would travel to any of these other planets, we wouldn't make it, because Earth has everything we need to survive. So thanks so much for watching. Remember, it takes time, patience, and practice to view the stars and the planets. I would say the planets are confusing to look at because their positions in the sky changes so much when you compare it to the stars. The stars have very predictable motions, whereas the planets are in different places throughout the year. So Thank you so much for watching, and as always, keep looking up.